Greetings, gay pirates. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I am Patrick Smith. Today I have with me special guest Sean Soulless Jones to talk about... welcome to the show, Sean.
Ahoy.
It's your wallpaper, man. I don't know what to say. So, you got in the background. So we have a viewer submission that we are hopelessly behind on our viewer content submissions. This one was direct messaged to me. And I think it's an interesting topic that relates to conversations that Sean and I have had in the past. So I wanted to like tag him in here to talk through this with me. Let me go ahead and read this prompt and we can discuss. And also my background is, you know, a teaser for something that we might be doing soon. Anyway, here's a question. To me, it seems libertarians, anarchists, and voluntarists spend a shit ton of time, money, energy, and resources on fighting the state. Why? Why? I don't know how to say that. Why? It seems like our resources would be better spent on moving somewhere that respects freedom. Buying a decommissioned Navy vessel, moving to a foreign country, or moving to a safer, unincorporated part of the US. To me, it's like a toxic marriage. What are you trying to save? It's already lost. I know moving is also expensive, but had we all not fought the state and pooled our year's worth of time and energy for that purpose, maybe we could afford to build a free society. And there's a second part to this, but I think that's probably enough to kind of kick the topic off, because you and I have both gone back and forth on, wow, this activism is taking over my life. And you know, you'll make comments to me like, oh yeah, I gotta go like make money and stop, you know, dragging guillotines to courthouses and other such things, right?
Absolutely.
And I know like from my perspective, my activism includes making video content like this, right? So like, I've been treating this like a full-time job, but it's not paying like a full-time job. It's paying like a tiny little hobby. I mean, I have high hopes for one day, but yeah, so it takes a massive amount of your personal free time that you would otherwise be putting into either making money or just hobbies, just other good things in the world. And I think there's a good discussion to be had about where the line should be. What do you think? Where do you think the line should be?
Fuck, I mean, the line is wherever you feel it's worthy as an individual. I mean, some people are willing to sacrifice more. You know, I guess it depends on how high you hold that value in what you're doing as to what the sacrifice is. Certainly for me, the line is when it starts to hurt my child. You know, when it starts to negatively impact his life, kind of as going back to why I can't just move away. Well, I'm only 50% custodian of my son. There is a government document in place that says that if I want that 50% responsibility, you know, I have to stay within contiguous counties. So I'm landlocked from the part that nothing is more important than me having that 50% custody. You know, so all other things, you know, fall to the wayside if that were ever in jeopardy.
Yeah, the specific question of should we move away is a more nuanced question. It's a more individual question than just the question of like what portion of your life should you dedicate to making the world a better place? Like, first of all, if you don't have kids, I think you have a lot less impetus to do so because you're not really doing it for, like, any changes you make over the course of your life will be realized after you're dead, mostly, right? So like raising kids more peacefully creates a much better future for the world, one that I will likely not see unless we upload our brains into computers.
And I have told people particularly when they are asking me about anarchy and, you know, is it practical? And, you know, it won't happen, you know, in this current system. And, you know, and I've told people I'm not doing this for myself. I mean, I've already resided the way this is going. I'm never going to see the voluntary society that I envision and I want. I don't know that my son will see it, but even by the time he's my age. This is almost anarchy for my grandchildren who may or may not even ever exist. This isn't instant gratification. I mean, there's instant gratification in the act of the activism, but I also know that I'm not going to really yield many results in my direct life from anything that we're doing.
You know, I've heard different time estimates of when freedom might come, and I think the most optimistic I've ever heard, which I think was a little insane, was like 5 years. I think that's absurd.
Are they net voters?
I think a much more realistic one, as a best case scenario, would be like 20 years, but that would require a massive change in the population in a direction away from the one they're already going. So the momentum is in the wrong direction right now. So not only would that momentum have to stop, it would have to reverse and get momentum in the other direction very soon for 20 years to be a thing. Mm-hmm. So like there's long-term and short-term strategies. The long-term strategy is parenting. That is the way you change the world long-term. Like it's one of those things like when you're plotting a trajectory for a spacecraft, any small change early on in the flight will have a massive difference in where the ship ends up at the end of its trek, right? And parenting is that early on. That is the really powerful way to change the world, but you don't see it till way in the future, probably after we're dead, grandkids like you're talking about. The fast ways to change, I think, is more what this guy's talking about, like pushing guillotines and open carry marches and, beating the streets and making content like this to try and wake people up to the ideas of voluntarism. That's like the short game. Much less sporadically effective, right? I mean, we're certainly waking some people up. You can't deny that. And we just got to get more people to wake other people up so we get like a network effect. But how much of your life should you devote to it? Like, when is too much? That is an entirely personal, subjective, one-off thing. Like, you are under no obligation to do anything, unless you have kids. I think if you have kids, I think you could say that there's an obligation to try and make the world a better place for them. Don't have kids if you don't want to be obligated to do such things.
Yeah.
But
well, and even then, making the world better for your kid, even that is subjective. Do you mean like the world as a whole, just their immediate world? For some people, that's creating a freer society. For some people, that's hoarding money. I mean, that's even relative to what somebody values.
Yeah, like the MAGA people would be like, yeah, build a wall. That'll make the world better. Oh, God, no.
That'll make us freer. Let's all hide in the prison.
So then I think the real question he might be asking here is, well, why are we fighting the state versus just kind of going off on our own somewhere? And let's talk through that, because a lot of people have told me, like, if you want freedom, go in the middle of the ocean, go where there is no government. There is very few.
Somalia. I hear Somalia is nice this time of year.
There are very few places that don't have government, and it would be quite a feat to find one of those places and to keep it free from a government. So it's not. I don't think that's the easy way. Actually, I think that might be the more difficult way. At least it would. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I imagine the economic restrictions that would come from outside, even if it wasn't by direct force, I have a feeling there would be a form of economic pushback that would maybe make those people who've decided to start their own community, may make it very difficult for them to earn and sustain a quality of life that they're seeking.
Yeah, if you war game it out, it doesn't look good. So, you create a place that's free of government. Well, you're going to need utilities, you're going to need internet access, you're going to need contact and trade with the outside world. But the moment you have a spot on the internet that's regulation free, you're going to have all of these Bitcoin markets pop up that are unregulated and, might have some nefarious stuff going on. And so the first thing that happens is the United States of America says, oh, we've got this country out there that's, this lawless zone where all the criminals are, you know, putting their Bitcoin business to contract for murder for hire on the dark net, you know. And so what do we got to do? We either invade them, you know, because America loves that, or trade sanctions, cut them off from the internet. Like, the internet is controlled by the, you know, the Five Eye countries. Well, you would call them companies, corporations. Your straw man would call them corporations.
According to the Act of 1871, the United States government is a corporation.
Yes. So they cut you off. And what that means is it raises the bar of, okay, well, you can't just be on a ship. You can't just be on your own in a pocket of the world that doesn't have a government. You now have to be 100% self-sufficient in that pocket of the world. And you also have to accept the very real probability that you'll be completely cut off from most of the world. And I'm an IT guy. So if I'm cut off from the rest of the world, my profession's kind of out the window to a certain extent. And that's just speaking from a selfish perspective. But I think as a community in general, as a society in general, being completely cut off from the world is a very difficult place to be. I mean, you'd struggle to you'd struggle to be a first world country at that point, don't you think?
I do, and I believe the moment that we would have any success, even if it wasn't a formal invasion by an actual government, and I know some of you, this may be hard to believe, there are governments out there that hire other third parties to go in and invade on their behalf quietly.
What?
So I know. I read it on the internet, so it's got to be true.
Yeah.
But so I don't think I do think that I guess the one benefit to something like that would be, potentially could be, that once all those people had, you know, created their own society, and maybe a lot of people around the world knew about them, if they were recklessly slaughtered by one of these other groups that we previously mentioned, perhaps the outrage by the rest of the world would it would be a catalyst. Unfortunately, that catalyst would require a bunch of peaceful people to be slaughtered in order for it to take hold. So not really a desirable situation for those that would actually be involved. And while we all want to affect change, I think very few of us are, you know, willing to die for it unless we were in a position of just absolute necessity, backs against the wall. But I don't think there's anybody I know wants to be a sacrificial lamb.
And I guess you could say, well, okay, I'm not talking about creating a whole society. I'm just talking about getting the cool people that I know, like, you know, 50 or 100 people, and going off on our own. I mean, that might work for a little while, but it would seem like you'd be susceptible to capture at any time, you know, incorporation into a corporation, and, you know, straw men created. So let me read the second half of this. Another point to consider, even when one wins against government, typically there was significant sacrifice in mental, emotional, and spiritual baggage. And there's also the possibility of retaliation from government. A victory against government can be Pyrrhic? Hold on.
Pyrrhic.
Google says it's Pyrrhic. A victory against government can be Pyrrhic. It's also time not spent pursuing your passion, assuming one has skills beyond activism, time spent in jail, away from family, and away from your true calling. That's absolutely true. There are risks and downsides to being public. Like, I was interviewed recently on a YouTube channel. It was like a cat anarchist, and everyone that was part of the interview, it was like 6 people. None of them showed their faces. They all had avatars that were animals and lizards and foxes or whatever. And all you heard was their voice. They do this to maintain anonymity so that they can talk about this stuff without ever being targeted by anybody. And the moment you do things publicly, you open yourself to risk from the left, from the right, and, you know, from the state in general. So why do that, I think, is kind of his question. And again, I think if it's just you, again, like, I don't think you have to. I think if you have kids, though, you might need to find ways to make the world a better place to the best of your ability. And if the best of your ability is like peaceful parenting plus, you know, leaving a good retirement fund, or, you know, setting themselves up with a good education and activism and things like that, then, you know, so be it. It's your life. You gotta kind of have to decide what's best. Like this, me having time to spend on this channel doing this content for you guys is a limited thing. Like, this will not go on forever. I'm going to do it as long as I can, but one day this will stop. I will, you know, something will happen in life that will make me need to go make money, or make me need to concentrate on something else for a while. So that's kind of one of the reasons I'm doing so much of it right now while I can, because I have an opportunity to. And I love the thought of, you know, having this content for my kids, you know, generations, you know, 5 generations from now, they'll be able to look back and see me laughing with Sean about our straw men. Even though I'm sure they'll call us a bigot or something for something we said, because it seems like dead people are always bigoted about something.
Well, yeah, you're either you know, a martyr or a villain in death, seems.
Pretty much. I don't feel like we're giving like a really good, like, crazy answer. I don't think we're not blowing anybody away with this, right? Go ahead.
No, I mean, you know, that, and I meet people like this all the time. I mean, I meet people that ask me, you know, about what we're doing, or tell me how much they appreciate it, how much they respect it, how much they idolize is a strong word, but how they say things like, I wish I could, or I wish I would do something like that. And people have a limited bandwidth. You know, you can only deal with so many things in a day, in a week, in a month. You only have so much financial bandwidth, spiritual, mental, emotional bandwidth. And so I think it depends on, one, how full the rest of your life is. I mean, for the most part, I have a girlfriend, but we lead kind of separate lives for the most part. So I'm alone. If I don't have my son, the majority of the rest of my time, I have free to go over to your house, to go drag guillotines to the courthouse, stand in front of the courthouse, pass out flyers. I understand not everybody has that. So I think for me, it's important knowing that I have that ability to be able to go out there and plant the seed, because I know not everybody else has that opportunity. I've also noticed that when I run into people in public that I'm also friends with on Facebook, particularly people that, you know, that I went to school with, it turns out that there's a whole lot of people that read my content and follow me that just don't say anything.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of people observing that we don't necessarily know are right there. And so for me, every time I hear one of those stories, it kind of reaffirms a little bit what I'm doing. Like, okay, people are watching, you know, people are agreeing. A lot of people just don't want to get involved with it, especially on social media. I've been accused of having a gang of trolls that will attack people on my feed if they may cross some status lines. Don't know. Don't know who that could be.
That's what you get if you do that. They should know better.
But you know, but it really is reaffirming for me whenever I find out that people are watching it. You know, the girlfriend was telling me last night that she watched you and Kaysen's piece on the Gillette ad. That was unprompted. I didn't even tell her about it. You know, but you know, the sharing levels, every time I find out that people are watching and reading and following, it does re-energize me a little bit to kind of keep going. I will fully admit,
that's totally true.
I've struggled with at times putting the priority of earning a living where it should be the last couple of years.
Totally.
You know, there are times that okay, we just need to put this shit show down and,
Yep.
you know, go, hey, the dumpster fire is going to keep burning, whether I throw my 2 cents in it or not. It was there before I got there, and the odds are it's going to be there after I leave. So do what I can. But it is, you know, as the person wrote in, I think it's important to try to find that balance and have a good personal life. You know, I've been fortunate to meet all of you guys, and we have VOD and these things where we get to actually get out with other like-minded people and have real human engagement. It's not all online stuff. Yeah. So I think that's been an important added value the last year for me.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? I think there's other kinds of activism that some people also forget about. Like, and this is not a shameless plug. I'm describing my behavior. This is what I do. So, like Cal Molinay up northeast does some pretty interesting, fun to watch, and probably useful man on the street talks with people. And I like that. I personally want to, and hopefully plan on doing some of that in the future. But I also want to support Cal, and in giving him my support, you know, being a Patreon or supporter of his, I get to take a little piece of the credit for the work and the activism that he's doing, because I'm helping make that possible by just monetarily supporting him in doing that. So doing that is a way to be an activist if you don't necessarily have time. That, of course, requires money. The other thing I wanted to say was sharing people's content, you know, amplifying messages that you agree with to your circles is another way. The other thing I wanted to say was I wanted to talk about how this works with like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So you have physiological, then safety, then love and belonging, then esteem, and then self-actualization. So you just kind of like fold this in with your hierarchy of needs, right? And so like above self-actualization probably becomes, you know, children. Actually, children's probably around in love and belonging. That's probably lower. But, you know, you take care of your kids, then you take care of yourself and your relationships that are most important to you. And then above that, that's where probably activism comes in, somewhere in there. So like if your activism starts damaging your physiological needs or your safety, that has to be balanced. And like this guy that wrote in pointed out, it can absolutely affect your safety. Like look at Cody Wilson. It's affected his safety. Mm-hmm. Look at Schaefer Cox, the Silk Road, Ross Albright. You know, he did great things in the world, and like you said, he won a serious victory over government, and it was a Pyrrhic victory for him. Now, you know, they did retaliate. Mm-hmm. You have to weigh the cost benefit. And I think children is the biggest thumb on that scale. You get like, I have a limit to my activism in my kids. Like if I didn't have kids, world, you better watch out. You know, I'd be doing some other things, let's just say. But you know, I have kids, no doubt. So that has to factor into my cost benefit. That has to factor my risk analysis. That has to factor into my risk analysis because I have to be here for my children. Do you have any final thoughts? That's kind of what I wanted to say on it. No. I mean, I agree. You know, for me, the boy I'm quite honestly, he was the catalyst for me getting involved. But he's also what keeps that balance going for me. You know, awesomeness is he's been able to participate in walks, marches, feed the need, and some other stuff, you know, really since about the age of 7 on. So I've been lucky to merge that. I've also been fortunate enough that me and my ex-wife are on really good terms. So she trusts my judgment when I take him places, you know, to go out and do these types of things. You know, I know not every man is as fortunate as I am, particularly to have that kind of relationship. I could write a book on that one. Yes, so could I.
The opposite ends of the spectrum on that too.
Oh yeah. And so the last thing I'd say is like, make sure that you're staying happy as you can be in your situation. Like, I remember this one lady, I won't say her name, but she was an activist for a really long time. and we were at one of the previous Feed the Needs, and she's like, yeah, I'm tapping out. You know, I've been doing this stuff for 20 years or whatever. And, you know, it's time for somebody else to carry the torch. I'm going to go be with my grandkids. And I was like, wow, you know, that's probably a vision of my future. I'm going to bust ass while I can. And at some point, I'm going to make sure that I'm happy with my time in the universe as well, because we only live once. Our atoms are only glued together for a limited amount of time. And, you know, we need to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for ourselves as much as we can in the process. So I hope that helps.
I think mental and emotional health are very important, you know, and I think that's, everybody's got to be mindful of that. And I know getting into last year, I took on way too much where, you know, by the time October rolled around and I was still, you know, kind of running a campaign and doing all these things in the LP and then trying to do stuff with the anarchists, it was just started to be too much. It was like, okay, something has to give, because I only have so much bandwidth, you know, and quite honestly, engaging with the rest of the people in the world is very draining at times. You know, going on and on with people on Facebook or Twitter or any of those, or even just irregular engagements with people, trying to explain the same things over and over again and have these looks like you're insane because you're telling people you just want to live in a peaceful society. Yeah. You know, and it can be, you know, and then, or as you and I have found out, there's people inside the movement that may not be as liberty, freedom oriented or NAP compliant as we thought. And that one is probably really one of the more disheartening things to try to get over initially, is that, oh, we're not actually on the same team. We're not really, you know, our vision of what a good human is drastically different. And, you know, when I first started to find out some of these people weren't exactly what I thought they were, it was really hard and deflating. You know, it's really deflating. And, you know, by good fortune, that's also been supplemented by a reinforcement of a bunch of badass motherfuckers who I know are ethical, principled, and have my back. But that's a kick in the dick when you find out that, you know, these people that you've been watching their content, you know, and they've helped you along in your evolution. Like these people, some of these people have had direct effect on my understanding of freedom, liberty, and nappiness, to find out that some of these people are shitlords. You know, that's like its own little battle inside the battle. It's like, not only am I fighting the government and I'm trying to fight off status, but now, goddammit, I'm fighting people in my own fucking movement. Like, you know. Yep.
And the other thing is, like, if you're going to spend your time towards an activism, just do a shit test. Just do it. That's not the word. just do an analysis, like an unbiased step back and look at it and be like, okay, I'm going to spend X amount of time doing this thing, and what do I really think the effect in the world is going to be from that? And weigh the cost benefit. So, like, I think every time we have a good conversation on this channel, on this platform, I think that is generally a much better use of my time than most of the other forms of activism that I could be having. And I'm not downplaying the importance of our on the street activism, like when we push guillotines around. But if you think about it, you know, that was a big effort leading up to a day where a lot of people put forward a lot of man hours doing something. How much freer are we right now because of that? I mean, at best, you can sort of argue that it'll have ripple effects, like people seeing people being resistant to authority. And so it'll kind of be a small effect rippled out over a large audience over time. But compare, I'm just saying, compare that to this video, let's say, for example, that's giving advice to the other people that want to be activists in the world. I saw a statistic now, and I haven't done the yay, we hit 1,000 subscribers video yet, because I'm super excited about it and I wanted to do it right. But so Kaysen just pointed out, he checked the analytics on the YouTube channel, and he basically said, we have crossed the 43,000 minute a month threshold, which basically means that's the number of minutes in a month. And so that kind of means that my mouth somewhere to someone is talking 24/7 every day of every month, which is kind of freaky. But in a way, it amplifies the activism. So if I do work here, it amplifies, it goes out and it continues helping even when I'm not actively spending time on it. That's all I was trying to say. If you're going to spend, your lifespan on activism, do it in smart ways that gets the most benefit. And I guess what I'm trying to low-key say is if you're in the Libertarian Party and you just spent 9 months of your life worrying about sweating over donating money to beating the street, door knocking, going to meetups, county meetings and city meetings and state meetings and worrying about national party drama. And then at the end, every candidate loses. Consider that next time they want you to do it again. That's just kind of what I mean when I'm like, evaluate the efficacy of your time. So, do you have anything you wanted to say? I'm gonna close this thing out. I think that was a good video.
Taxation is theft.
Thanks for joining me, Sean. I appreciate being able to tap you in on this. I think you had some good thoughts on it. So,
always great talking with you. Look forward to more of these.
Oh yeah, we got some more
I'll
cool.
I'll have better fucking lighting next time too.
You do that.
Well, once I repossess my lights from the boys' school play is over at the end of the month, and I can have my YouTube lights back.
It's Maslow's hierarchy of lighting needs. I understand. I got it.
Yeah.
Talk to you guys later.
It makes me the cool dad. All right. Have a good night.